am not in this podcast. What? You're not in this podcast? No, as I am not in this podcast. And who is in this podcast? Well, I'm reading the foreword of this is the foreword of the book I was reading, Hericlitus, Fragments, Penguin Classics, translated Brooks, Haxton, Haxton. Oh, that's a classic. Well, this is classical. Yeah, it's classic. Forward. I am as I am not. Because archetypal modes of thought transcend time and place, the insights of Hericlitus are strikingly postmodern. Yeah, this is because it's postmodern, it's appropriate for me to do a postmodern podcast. Although conceived 500 years before our era in the Greek city of Ephesus. Actually, I've been to Ephesus. They have the famous library. His poetic aphorisms show a deconstructive mind at work. And this podcast also shows a deconstructive mind at work. Reading these poetic aphorisms. Also, you'll read poetic aphorisms. Yeah, like I've read like Basho's poetry and things that are like haiku poetry. So if it's an aphorism or poetic, it qualifies for podcast. Yeah, as it is, or maybe as it is not. The life of thought does not necessarily progress. For as he says, any day stands equal to the rest. Yeah, and any of my past life stands equal to the rest. And any day in my life stands equal to the rest. So your days don't have good and bad days. And the life of the thought. Yeah. Since moving forward and moving back are one and the same. Yeah, for me, on the tennis court, moving forward and back is pretty much the same thing, okay? The latest postmodern thinking completes the circle where Hericlitus began. The beginning is the end. Yeah, and when I began meditation, that was the beginning of the end, because the end result of meditation is to figure out the pathway to the way to heaven. So also at the end you're going to go to heaven. Oh, you're going in the beginning to heaven? Yeah, I went in the beginning to heaven, and at the end I'll also go. How do you know for sure? The beginning is the end. Then it says, maybe that's aphorism 70. Early Greek thinkers sought the stuff of which the world was made. For Thales, Thales, it was water. For Anaximenes, air. For Anaximenes, a combination of hot and cold. Empedocles expanded the stuff to four inconstructible elemental principles, while Anaxagoras is said to have proposed innumerable generative seeds composing the nature of things. The atomist, they had the atom. The atomist abstracted the seeds yet further. Yeah, so proposing multiple particles moving in a void. Yeah, they had multiple particles like moving in a void, so like so quarks neutrons and protons. They each together and spawn the truth of the world. Wise in numbers, the proportions and relations, and Parmenides, the most metaphysical of them all, laid out his theory of the cosmos through the sheer power of logical thought. Yeah, so we might find out the theory of the cosmos in this podcast. Hericlitus took a different tack. His method is more psychological. He posited no basic substance, nor did he abstract the senses into numbers, atoms, or assertions about being as a whole. Instead, he said, nothing is stable. Yeah, there's nothing stable in this podcast, and nothing stable. Your life isn't stable either. Is your tennis hits at least at all stable? Nothing is stable in this podcast. All is in flux. Yeah, everything is in flux and nothing is stable. Boom. Whatever you say about anything, its opposite is equally true. Yeah, whatever the Democrats say, the opposite of what the Republicans say is also equally true. Oh, really? Oh, yeah, both sides have some truth in what they say. Oh, so they are both true? How are you going to have an election, huh? He brought language into the game of cosmological thinking. Declarations will always be self-contradictory, relative, subjective. People dull their wits with gibberish and cannot use their ears and eyes. Yeah, that's number 4. They lack the skill to listen or to speak. Yeah, and they don't actually listen or speak correctly. Their wits are dulled with gibberish. That's by looking at Twitter, or maybe watching TV, or going to the movies, or looking at Facebook or Instagram. What else they do? They even look at the news and stuff. Is everything gibberish? People dull their wits with gibberish and cannot use their eyes and ears. They're not able to use actually their inner ears and inner eyes. They don't use their third eye, and they don't use their listening faculty to listen to the music of the spheres on the right side of the head and the inner ear. They lack the skill to listen or to speak. Yeah. Well, I have to accept the fact that I'm lacking in the skill to speak, so I'm practicing in this podcast. You cannot know the world in the manner of natural philosophy or mathematics or deductive logic. He's saying you cannot know the world from deductive logic. Because by cosmic rule, all things change. Oh no. Yeah, actually, even in scientific thought, they'll have a theory, and then later on, they'll change a theory, a new theory, and then later on, another theory after that changes it again. The sun is new again all day. The river where you set your foot just now is gone. Those waters giving way to this now, this. He says that's fragment 41. Oh, that's the most famous one, yeah. Well, is that all you and a priori knew about it? Did you actually know anything about this guy, or was your mind dull with wits? Your wits were dull with gibberish? Yeah. Well, is that the cause of you being dull with gibberish? Do you talk too much, podcast too much, or listen to too much, or watch the news, or you watch TV, or you watch movies, or what's wrong with you? His name for this changing flux of process in today's terms is fire, a metaphor for the shifting meanings of all truth. Therefore, the account or logos. Yeah, logos, Logos, of the world is also fire, truth, wisdom, knowledge, reality. None can stand apart from this fire in the last knowledge of fixity. Hericlitian fire, it must be insisted as neither a metaphysical essence like the elements of his spirit, nor spiritual energy, nor material substance. The fire that burns your hand, it's his fire, is metaphorical, a psychological intensity that penetrates through all literalisms. Quicksilver fire that flows through the hand, burns away whatever tries to grasp reality and hold it firm. This fire as the active principle of deconstruction. So we're talking about the active principle of deconstruction. Brilliantly deconstructs itself. Yeah, so this podcast will, at the end, it's going to brilliantly deconstruct itself. Okay. You can, however, reflect your own mind, see into your own thoughts. You can become psychological, or as he puts it, quote, applicants for wisdom, do what I have done, inquire within. So, fragment 80, if you want to apply for wisdom in this podcast, you can apply within. Where is within? Within the podcast, or within the website, or where is within? People ought to know themselves, for fragment 106. My software wants to update itself, and it's constantly in flux. Yeah, the actual software of your phone is constantly in flux, and they're constantly updating it in the middle of your podcast. Oh, your phone was in flux? Yeah. They asked if I wanted to install an update in the middle of this podcast. People ought to know themselves. Well, yeah. Yeah, we've heard this concept of knowing yourself. People ought to know themselves. But who am I? That's a good question. Is that why you meditate? This psychological term means you cannot know the psyche no matter how endless your search. The psyche, since consciousness is always also its opposite, unconsciousness. How better say this than I am as I am not? Yeah, I am when I am not. So when I am not in meditation, I am. I am not. Statements pertaining to sleep add support to the notion of Hericlitus, the psychologist. This is a psychology podcast. Rather than a focus upon the healing efficacy of dreams, and as in the Asclepian cult of his time, or upon their prognostic meaning, as summed up in Egyptian and later Greek writings by Artemidonus. Hericlitus simply states that the logos is active in sleep.